She's got some nice long hair.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. We are live. We have an amazing show today. I'm really excited about this because it's Mock Draft Monday. We're actually going live Monday night on Twitch, on YouTube. So make sure to drop a like, make sure to subscribe. Thought we'd switch things up a little bit differently. So this is real fun. So the theme of today's show is what we're going to do is we're going to have not just users create the mock drafts, we're having the bots create the mock draft. We're having computers. So what I'm going to be doing is I am currently generating 5 mock drafts as we speak. I'm seeing them go right now. And what we're going to do is we are going to react to what the simulations have to choose for the Chicago Bears, because we know what we would want to choose, but I really want to see what do these simulators even pick for the Chicago Bears. And I'm hoping that it gives us some form of a difference in just normal people's opinions as we start to see what the computers generate. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure to rate 5 stars. And let me see. So it's just starting to finish up. So I'm just going to throw what we have out there on the screen. Just 1 second, real quick. And here we go. So the first one just finished up. So I am excited to see what we have in this very first draft. And let's see, let me click on user picks. And okay, this is a solid one. So I'll first just kind of break down who the Bears are potentially get or who the Bears they have them getting. And then after that, what we're going to do is I'm then going to just see who's around there and start adding a little bit more color. But with this first draft selection, what we're seeing, Tyler Smith with our 39th pick, the interior offensive lineman out of Tulsa, George Pickens, fan favorite, the wide receiver out of Georgia at 48, Kingsley and Naberi. We got some hard names at this beginning part. The edge out of South Carolina, pick number 71. And at 148, we got Max Mitchell, the offensive tackle out of Louisiana. We've seen him go frequently to the Bears. And 150, another difficult name. So Ioma Owuzurike, the interior defensive lineman out of Iowa State. And 186, we are selecting Jack Jones, the cornerback out of Arizona State. So first off, looking at this, I'm liking it. Yet again, this is just all auto-generated. We are reacting to this. And Tyler Smith is a good player. I like him. He's been really a left tackle, but he's an incredible run blocker and just can kind of move, just an overall people mover. But the biggest thing for me is he seems rather untapped. He seems like a gem that if we just taught him how to play football a little bit better, the better. But really, one thing too, from a Tyler Smith perspective, let me just adjust the screen real quick. But he also has held a lot of times. Yet again, not a true amazing prospect, but still has the potential to really be a true gem out there inside of this draft. But then the next, we have George Pickens. We've talked about him before on the show as well. George Pickens, some of the benefits that we see with him is that he's a good combination of speed and also being able to have that jump ball. Another guy that I feel is a potential gem that we could get later on. So I'm so far liking this. Where you kind of get me is with Kingsley, the edge out of South Carolina. It might have just been because the first dose that I had of him was out of the NFL Combine, and if you watched him for at the NFL Combine, he lost like 30 pounds, and the rumor was that he was sick, and it was confirmed. He got sick. He lost a lot of different weight, and hopefully now they're saying that he's starting to get it back on. Kingsley, though, is somebody that wins with power. And I don't really love him right here because I think of him more as a 3-4 type of a edge rusher rather than a 4-3 type of an edge rusher. And I agree with PB Priest. I can't wait for football. I'm so excited for when it eventually comes back out. So Definitely agree there. But the next guys that we got out here, we got Max Mitchell, the offensive tackle out of Louisiana, Raging Cajun. We've talked about him before on this show. His biggest downside. So he's a phenomenal blocker, great flexibility. Can kind of see him as a left and a right tackle, even though he predominantly played at that right tackle spot. But where he lacks is I think he's under 300 pounds and he's 6'6". So he's a very, very light frame type of guy. You want to see more weight on him when he gets to that NFL level. But he shows the flexibility that you want. He shows that he's got all the skills to become a good offensive tackle. So I like this. And as we keep on going down, Ioma, the interior defensive lineman out of Iowa State. Um, I don't know too much about him. I just know that he's big and he's played like multiple different slots. He's also been more of a run stuffer. I think this year he got a little bit more sacks than expected, but still is more seen as a run stuffer. So I don't love it because I want more of a pass rush later on, but still a solid depth guy that you can get. And the last selection, Jack Jones, the cornerback out of Arizona State. He's a playmaker. That's what I love about him is that he scored a lot of touchdowns. He was a former five-star recruit. So to me, he's a big play waiting to happen. He's also really, really light. I think he's in the 170s. That's me weight. And I'm not going to be a starting cornerback anytime soon. So and yet again, another guy that you want to see a little bit more weight on his frame, but he does have the ability to take that ball to the house. Now, I'm just kind of curious where some people went in the second round just to kind of see. So we have Kenyon Green going 33. We have Lewis Sign going 34. Cameron Thomas 35. N'Kobe Dean 36. I like that N'Kobe Dean is slowly starting to drop. That would be incredible if he was on the Bears. Jalen Petrie, a guy that I really like, safety out of Baylor, went one pick before us, and Jaquan Brisker, another safety, two picks before us. So there was still Christian Watson on the board, Sky Moore, so both wide receivers. Devin Lloyd dropping to pick 43. That's pretty crazy. I wish that the Bears would have gotten Devin Lloyd instead. I don't see him dropping that far. And we see DeMarvin Allele and Perion Winfrey. So a lot of really good talent kind of at that second round that we saw inside of this mock draft. And then obviously us selecting George Pickens. So I give us a pass that we didn't select it at the very beginning. But I like this. I think that this is a solid pick. I think that this is a solid computer generated mock draft with Tyler Smith, Pickens, Kingsley, not a huge fan, but Mitchell, I like that. So, you know what? It's going to stay at my kind of number one slot for right now. But let's see our second one. Let's see our second generation that we got. And oh, okay. Okay. So our first pick. So I like the TDN. So I'm using TDN Mock Draft Simulator. One reason why I like it is that sometimes they have things that you don't expect to happens, which is what you see at the NFL draft. Sometimes you have random people kind of falling. Tyler Linderbaum is our first selection. Now, this is a little bit crazy to me, but it actually has holds some water with this because there's some rumors out there. Now, every single draft smokescreen a lot of times has some truths, and sometimes it's complete BS. We heard the smokescreen, quote unquote, that Justin Fields was going to fall, and what do you know? He fell. A lot of people are saying Linderbaum is probably going to fall because he shows up to the combine. I think he had about 31-inch arms, really, really short arms. People don't like his power and they think that he's just more of a zone type of center. So they're all fair assessments that as to why people think that he's potentially going to drop out of the first round. I think that would be crazy because he's an incredible center prospect, and I'm all for it because if he's on the board, I'm saying turn in the card, get your franchise center, and you know what, Lucas Patrick, you can play right guard. We have a center that that is going to be able to develop around Justin Fields. But I digress. Let's keep going through. So Linderbaum, 39 at 48. Cameron Thomas, the edge out of San Diego State. 71, Trey McBride, the tight end out of Colorado State. At 148, Kellen Diesch, the offensive tackle out of Arizona State. 150, Danny Gray, the wide receiver out of SMU, and 186, Tyler Algier, the running back out of BYU. Now, first impressions, I really like this draft so far. So, Tyler Linderbaum, to me, is one of the best prospects to come out at the center position in the last 10 years. I don't see somebody dominating at that center position or really as a true freshman. When he came in, he was the best center in all of the NCAA. And to me, that's what you want to see. It reminds me a little bit, not saying he is, but it reminds me of the guard out of the Colts. And I can't believe Quentin Nelson. So Quentin Nelson, he was the best guard in the NCAA. And that's why obviously he's now going to most likely be in the Hall of Fame. Not saying Linderbaum's a Hall of Famer, but he reminds me a lot of the trajectory of a Quentin Nelson, where he was just always the best player at his position when he was out on the field. So to me, I like the idea of Linderbaum if he falls, which they are saying there is a good chance that he is. So computer mock draft, you get a pass with that. And Cameron Thomas, the edge out of San Diego State, this is the reason why we do this is why we did a computer mock draft, because I don't think I've ever seen a mock draft done by someone who covers the Bears with Cameron Thomas. Cameron Thomas is an edge out of San Diego State, and I believe that he had double digit sacks last year. He's a really good player, but the thing that is interesting, if my memory serves me correct, he was a Senior Bowl standout at the interior. He played some interior, I believe, a couple of years ago, but at the edge, he's kind of been moving more towards the edge. So my big thing is if they were to select a Cameron Thomas, I like him more as an interior player rather than an edge, even though he's listed as an edge. So I find that it's weird. This is why we did a computer mock draft. This is why we had them draft it, because I like him as a third down player then for the Bears, or as that three technique rather than more so an edge, because I think we're pretty set at edge. But let's actually move down to Trey McBride. I like this selection, but in the back of my mind, I'm going, where are these wide receivers? Where are these cornerbacks, computers? Because we need some people out there. But Trey McBride, unless we're running two tight end sets or one tight end and one fullback, Trey McBride, though, to me I think that this is really like best player available. Trey McBride reminds me a lot of Cole Kmet. I think Cole Kmet, personally, I thought he was more of a third round type of a prospect. Trey McBride is very similar. If you lowered Cole Kmet's athleticism and you raised his kind of overall awareness, like football awareness, I guess you could say, it reminds me of Trey McBride. He's a reliable target, and the only thing that gets me iffy when I see this selection is that he's an inline player. So he lines up right alongside the tight end. So if you have two tight ends, because Cole Kmet does that, I mean, he still goes in the slot, but he's really more of that Y tight end, that inline player. And same thing with Trey McBride. I think we have a different type of a field out there. So I don't love that selection. And I know that we're also looking at a couple extra tight ends as we're currently recording this live episode. So there could be kind of a filled out roster from a tight end perspective when this does happen. So other players too, Kellen Deesh, the offensive tackle out of Arizona State. I like this selection. Deesh is someone who is very athletic, fits inside of his own scheme, but similar to Max Mitchell that we talked about before, kind of the questions about his overall size, because he needs to just add on a little bit more weight. I do like Mitchell more than Deesh, but I do think that Deesh allows us to have more of just he's a lot faster than a Max Mitchell. I think he's got a higher ceiling than a Mitchell. But if we go down to pick 150 with Danny Gray, the wide receiver out of SMU, this guy I haven't seen on a lot of mock drafts, but I like this. He reminds me a little bit of Byron Pringle. I think he's around that 6 foot type of range, and Danny Gray has phenomenal speed. He also, I believe, was a JUCO transfer, so he played 2 years at SMU. But also, I get nervous whenever I see SMU wide receivers because I loved Trey Quinn when he was coming out in the draft. He was a slot guy. He was your typical like Julian Edelman, Wes Welker prototypes where he was short and shifty. But ended up not doing much because the SMU offense really kind of favors the wide receivers. So Danny Gray, I still think that he's got the potential. He's packs some star power late in that sixth round type of range. So I like the idea of at least bringing in a player like a Danny Gray. So I like that selection. So way to go, computer so far. And the last one, Tyler Algier, the running back out of BYU. Now, Tyler Algier, this is why I'm a big fan of just drafting running backs and not really paying them because Tyler Algier is someone that could probably come in and be your second running back, be a good player. But obviously, we already have two good running backs. I don't love the selection of a running back late because we also have Darrington Evans on a 2-year deal when we picked him up off of waivers. But I like the idea of at least getting somebody because it is David Montgomery's last year. It really is. So to me, I hate saying it like, are they going to let David Montgomery go? But if you have Khalil Herbert and you have a player like Algier, does it make sense? So I think we'll see. But I like the pick because he's a really big power back. We saw that with Green Bay's offense that you had these big. You had AJ Dillon, Quadzilla, that was able to blow through people. Algier is similar, not the same size, but still more of that power back that we probably want inside of this offense. So this to me, I really like because we're getting a center. We're getting a kind of, I'm going to say Kellen Diesch is more of that swing tackle that we have. Trey McBride, I think he's a good tight end. But do we really need another tight end? Cameron Thomas, I question if he's playing the three tech. I kind of like that. And Danny Gray, I like the depth at wide receiver. I just get nervous since the computer didn't select a wide receiver earlier. But Danny Gray could at least kind of compete. Um, so I actually want to kind of compare it to the first mock draft that we had. Now, all the people that are watching live, let me know which one you think is better. The first one, where we have Tyler Smith, George Pickens, Kingsley, Max Mitchell, Ioma, I really don't want to say that name anymore, and Jack Jones versus the Tyler Linderbaum, Cameron Thomas, Trey McBride, Kellen Diesch, Danny Gray, and Tyler Algier. Right now, I'm I'm kind of indifferent right now because I like that we have a wide receiver in this selection. I like that there's George Pickens. I like that there's Tyler Smith. I like Max Mitchell a lot more. I think that you basically solidify your offensive line. You also get a wide receiver. I really don't like the Kingsley pick, but I still think that you have at least three really good picks and you're picking up some depth at the interior defensive line and cornerback positions. And Linderbaum, I absolutely love. And Cameron Thomas could be that interior defensive lineman. I just don't like that we're not really addressing that wide receiver position. So I'm actually going to leave this as is. So I'm going to leave this as the second for right now and this one as the first. But let's go and venture to our third mock draft. I Let's see if it's as crazy as Linderbaum drop into the Chicago Bears. So, okay, it's still kind of crazy. It's still a little nuts. We have Traylon Burks going to the Chicago Bears at pick 39. Before we even go through this, I actually just want to see who is getting selected where he ended up dropping. Okay, so it's semi-realistic. Jalen Petrie, Jaquan Brisker, Tarek Woolen, a lot of people that were kind of expected to go. I think that the biggest question when you're looking at Traylon Burks potentially falling is where do the other wide receivers kind of stand? Because from a wide receiver perspective, I did see that there's rumors that Traylon Burks is dropping because people don't love that he's a bigger wide receiver. He's not as quick as some others, and the possession guys are seemingly kind of dropping. Jahan Dotson going to 22 to the Packers, that seems a little high to me, but I'll take it if it means that Traylon Burks falls to us. I think that he did show that he's got enough speed, but there's still some people, there's still those rumors. Is it smokescreen or is it legit? So if Traylon Burks falls, I'm more than fine picking him up. So the computer just did that because, hey, he is starting to fall in a lot of different mock drafts. So cool. We picked him up like the first pick so far, computers. Second, we talked about him before, Cameron Thomas, the edge out of San Diego State. There he is, coming back again. Yet again, more of a guy that I personally see more as that three tech. I like him for the Bears there because do we really need an edge? Or are we trying to shop Robert Quinn? I saw some rumors floating around there, but I don't know if we actually would be. But if we are, there we go. But I still like him more as that three tech. Jamari Salyer, the interior offensive lineman from Georgia, going at pick 71. Max Mitchell at 148. 150, Sincere McCormick from the running back out of UTSA. 186, we have Thomas Booker, interior defensive lineman out of Stanford. So just going back, Traylon Burks, I like him in this offense. I like that you get another tall person. The only thing that I get a little bit nervous about is how much separation did he truly get? For a big guy, he's actually created a lot of separation. Some people have been criticizing him that they don't think he's got crisp enough routes. So that's the reasons why you're starting to see him fall a little bit. But I still think he's got a lot of potential out here. And if he drops, it would be a phenomenal pickup for the Bears. Cameron Thomas already talked about it, three technique like that. Jamari Salyer, the interior offensive lineman for Georgia. The way to think about him is that even though that he was playing left tackle, he's really like all upper body. He's all upper body strength. He's like that guy if you go to the gym that's only doing upper body, skipping leg day, and then you play sports with him and he's just kind of shouldering you and throwing elbows, all upper body. Jamari Salyer is kind of that guy. Tremendous power with his upper body. Just needs to learn how to use his feet a lot more. And that's why a lot of people are saying, even though that he was a tackle, he's probably best at that interior spot. So I'm thinking that Salyer is then more that right guard. So we don't have tackles until Max Mitchell. I still think Max Mitchell would be able to compete for a starting tackle spot. So I like that idea. You have multiple people that can compete at that tackle spot. You have Salyer that can compete at that guard spot. Cameron Thomas, who can be your starting interior three tech. And now as we get later on, Sincere McCormick and Thomas Booker, I'll be honest, I'm not huge fans of either of these people. If you're curious who they are, Sincere McCormick is kind of the way that when I was watching his tape at UTSA, the word that comes to mind is that he's slippery, but he's not explosive. Meaning that as he's running, he's more so like shifting his side to side, but he's not like juking. He's not trying to make someone miss. It's just more quick, which is still solid. It's just, is that going to work in the NFL? I just get a little bit nervous about that. I'd much rather get the guy out of BYU that we had in the previous mock draft. Even though that Sincere McCormick is a little bit slipperier, I still like the big power, getting someone that has a different skill set than our other running backs. And Thomas Booker, when I was watching his tape, I wasn't in love what I saw. He had a good freshman and sophomore year, but his last year wasn't necessarily the best. He's a flexible offensive lineman, meaning he can play all defensive lineman. He can play all over that defensive line, might be more of that three technique, but really can play everywhere. So to me, I don't like what we did towards the end of it, but I like these kind of top four picks. I might just rate all these towards the end of it because there's so many players that we got to go through right now. So I think that these top four, I really like so far. But let's just keep on going. So we have two more mock drafts. So let's see this one. And I'm glad too, because my thumbnail had George Pickens, and I'm glad that one of these was actually George Pickens. So let's see mock draft number 4. And oh my God, we have Chris Olave dropping to the Chicago Bears. I have to see how this even would happen. I got to see why this would happen from the draft network. So let's look at wide receivers. Why would he be dropping? Jahan Dotson, I guess they really like Jahan Dotson in these mock draft simulators. And Traylon Burks kind of going a little bit ahead of that too. But honestly, a lot of the people that I'm seeing that went before, Boye Mafe, Jabo, Brisker, Petrie, it could happen. It really could happen. I think it just depends on I'm trying to just justify this a little bit. Why would Chris Olave drop? The only reasons why I could think that Chris Olave would actually drop is I've seen a lot of reviews, people talking about Chris Olave as being just a number two. Some people think that. Some people that think he's only a number two. He's never going to be a number one because he doesn't break tackles. That's the big knock on his resume is his lack to break tackles. So maybe he could. Honestly, now that I'm saying that, some people might not like that. Some people might want the bigger body in Traylon Burke. Some people might want a shiftier player that can actually get open. And, we start talking about a Christian Watson out of North Dakota State that could potentially go higher. This is crazy to see in a mock draft. But still, like we said, the Draft Network, they try to see what crazy things could potentially happen. And this would be crazy. I think I might cry if this would if this were to actually happen. And just like clockwork, our number 48 pick again seems like the computers love this. Is Cameron Thomas, the edge out of San Diego State? Yet again, we've never seen a mock draft really select this guy until we had the computer select it for us. Now that's 3 out of 4 have Cameron Thomas at 48. Pick number 71, Leo Chenal out of the linebacker out of Wisconsin. 148, we are taking Jack Jones. There we go. Another one, cornerback out of Arizona State. At 150, Max Mitchell. Again, I think that's 3 out of 4. Offensive tackle out of Louisiana. And at 186, Chris Paul, not the guard, but actually, yes, guard in offense out of Tulsa. So we already talked about Chris Olave. This would be incredible if he could drop to the Chicago Bears. Yet again, is that likely? No, but crazy things have happened in the draft. It always has happened, and this is one of the reasons. This is one of the options that could potentially happen if there's a 1% chance of it actually happening. Then Cameron Thomas, we talked about it at nauseum, three technique. But Leo Chenal is an interesting linebacker prospect. This dude is big, not necessarily like tall. I think he's like 6'3, 6'2, but he's like 260, 250, and wears the weight very, very well. If you want to talk about somebody who's going to go in and blow up the front line, that's this guy. He's got good speed. I think that he ran in the 4.5s because that was my big question is that he's a linebacker from Wisconsin. He's always a run stuffer. Can he actually blow up the line? And is he fast? Yeah, he showed it. It was in the 4.5 somewhere, but also I remember him jumping over a 40-inch vertical, just showing the explosive that he has. He's really good at moving forward, but when he has to move back, when he has to move side to side, that's really where he starts to kind of struggle because he's not necessarily a cover guy. He would be more of that linebacker that comes in when you do have your true 4-3, when it's the obvious run plays, and he comes in to kind of blow up the line and rush a little bit more. Do I think that he's going to be a good fit in this defense? Maybe not, but he is an explosive player, so maybe they might like that. So an interesting selection for sure from our computer friends. Jack Jones, we talked about before, the cornerback out of Arizona State. Playmaker, can bring some stuff to the house. So interested to see what he ends up doing. Needs to pack on a little bit more weight. Max Mitchell, love the guy. I think that he could be a really good player for everyone. And Chris Paul. Chris Paul, I actually didn't know this because we talked about Chris Paul on a previous mock draft Monday. And first off, he's more of a right tackle, but a lot of people are thinking that he's going to be moved to the inside. Now he's a very smart player, and he's just a very okay type of a prospect for me, but he could just be a good developmental guard. So to me, when I'm looking at this, obviously love Chris Olave because you just locked down the wide receiver position because he dropped to us, which is just absolutely nuts. Cameron Thomas, three tech, it's like still okay if you get flexible with it, but if he's true edge, I don't like the selection. Leo Chenal, I'm not in love with that pick. I like the idea of having an explosive linebacker come up to the line. And Jack Jones, picking him that high. In our other one, we picked him at 186, or the computer picked him at 186. So that might be a little bit too high. Like Max Mitchell and Chris Paul, with this, it feels like we're not necessarily addressing a specific need besides wide receiver and backup. because I think Chanel wouldn't be your every down starter. I think he's more of that run stuffing type of a player. I just want to see who was kind of available around that pick, just to see if there was any other additional linebackers that were out there. Darian Beavers out of Cincinnati. Um, Travis Jones would have been a really interesting pick. Channing Tindall, the linebacker out of Georgia, I probably would have liked a little bit better, more versatile, but not as explosive as the other. But really, yeah, not a lot of other linebackers, and I love JoJo Doman. Um, but still, so I like the selection at least with who was kind of available. But still, it's a very iffy type of a draft for me. Besides the Chris Olave pick, obviously, the Chris Olave pick. If anything, that just sends this into a crazy another stratosphere. But like we said, crazy things have happened in the draft. Crazy things have happened, and hopefully this ends up happening. But let's go to our final computer generated mock draft. So we've had some crazy selections so far. So we've this one wasn't that crazy, but Linderbaum has fallen to us. Traylon Burks has fallen to us. Chris Olave has fallen to us. Are we going to have another crazy selection? Let's see. So the fifth and final mock draft, we have Bernard Raymond, the offensive tackle out of Central Michigan, kind of falling to us. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll go through the picks real quick. 48, Tyler Smith, interior offensive lineman out of Tulsa. 71, David Bell, the wide receiver out of Purdue. 148, Kobe Bryant, the cornerback of Cincinnati. 150, Damone Clark, the linebacker out of LSU. And at 186, Cade Hall, the edge out of San Jose State. So, Bernard Raymond, the offensive tackle out of Central Michigan. I love this pick. And this is actually something when we talk about someone falling, this guy has an insane range of where he might be going because some people don't. Some people, we're talking about the size again. A lot of people are saying he needs to add more size. And I believe that the average, I just heard this not too long ago, the average position that he ends up going is 36. 36. We have pick number 39. So there is actually a good chance that this guy could fall to us. He's a left tackle, a former tight end, and just incredible athleticism. Like absolutely incredible athleticism, great feet, great balance. The biggest question is just his size. And a lot of people are saying, too, he hasn't played the position naturally. So some people are getting a little bit scared off at that. But I honestly think that he could be, no joke, the best offensive lineman in the draft when we start talking about this 3 years from now because of his high athletic upside. And honestly, he could drop to the Bears. It's actually a very realistic possibility. But then you look at other mock drafts, and some people love his tape. And I believe PFF might even have him as a top 10 type of prospect. But really, he's just a very, very good tackle. And I really like this selection because I think that day one, he starts for you at left tackle. Now we start to have a little position battle with Larry Borum and Tevin Jenkins at that right tackle spot. Larry Borum could even be shifted over to right guard. I think having him that can lock down that left tackle spot, love the selection. Then next, Tyler Smith, the interior offensive lineman out of Tulsa. We talked about him a little bit too. Phenomenal power as a run blocker, just a very unpolished type of player. So we're getting two guys that could literally be gems in the draft. If you move him to the interior, then I think that's a little bit better. But still, you have two guys that really could play tackle. So to me, your offensive line is set with these first two picks. Like we won't have to worry. I really wouldn't have any worry if we drafted Raymond and Tyler Smith as our offensive linemen. Justin Fields would be throwing a little party. Then next we have David Bell. Now, I am probably notorious for being a David Bell hater, and I'm just going to mention the reasons why. David Bell, I'm just not a big fan of him because of this. I don't think that he would gel with a Justin Fields. Justin Fields, we saw this last year. One wide receiver he struggled to create chemistry with, Allen Robinson. You can blame Nagy. You can 100% blame Nagy. But still, Justin Fields is a player that always threw to wide open receivers. And when you transition to the NFL and you want your wide receivers to be open so that you feel more confident. That's why I'm so iffy on David Bell as a Chicago Bear, because he wasn't able to create a lot of separation at Purdue, but he was a phenomenal contested catch receiver and could actually be a great player for a lot of different teams. But I just get nervous about Bell as a Chicago Bear because of that lack of separation. Um, but still, I kind of want to see who was kind of going around that to see if there's a better wide receiver. Mechie, the third from Alabama, was right after that. I'm a big sucker for Jalen Tolbert, who went after David Bell. Honestly, if they selected one of these guys, I'd be in love with this already. But I really like what this ended up doing. And Wandale, Kyle Phillips. So there were still a couple good wide receivers that we could have selected instead, but still we selected David Bell, or the computer selected David Bell. So no matter what, I still think that I really like this draft class. Then also we're going down Kobe Bryant, RIP, out of Cincinnati. Kobe Bryant, though, a little bit about him: great ball skills, phenomenal instincts when the ball is in the air, can really track it down, locate where it goes, and go up and grab that ball. He's a good zone corner, which is what we predominantly do. So he could be a very good scheme fit for us. We see him dropping, why a lot of people see Kobe Bryant falling, is because of his athleticism. It's very okay athleticism, but he really leveraged his athleticism while he was at Cincinnati, and he just needs to work on his eyes a little bit better. He's great when the ball's in the air, but when the ball is with the quarterback, he tends to kind of leverage his athleticism over lesser competition in college football. So he could be taken advantage of a little bit at the NFL. That's why you see him dropping. So I like him as a scheme fit out here. Now we have Damone Clark, the linebacker out of LSU. This guy, I was watching his tape and I just was blown away. I'm like, how is this guy going this far and going this late in the draft? Reason is that he had a spinal cord injury and most likely is not going to be able to play the entire rookie season. But this guy, when you watch him play, he is everything that we would want on this defense. He is tall, he is big, he is lanky, he is a do it all linebacker. Absolutely incredible. Big knock besides obviously his injury and coming off of that injury. So you're kind of redshirting him your first year. The big thing is though he does kind of stay very very upright when he is attacking the ball. It's really weird. Like he's great speed. Like if he just bent down a little bit more, he would be very good. But really he's got all the traits that you would actually want in a first round linebacker. First round, early second. But because of that spinal cord injury, you're seeing him really kind of drop. I'd be curious to see if anybody's really going to take a chance on a Damone Clark because of that spinal cord injury, because he's going to be out for an extra year. But I hope that he does make a quick recovery because he was a freak of nature when I was watching him out there. And Cade Hall, we come to the last mock draft and we come to someone that I really don't know much about at all. I felt like I knew everybody that we were at least selecting, but Cade Hall, I haven't watched any of his tape, truth be told. But really, what we're looking at, that's why we have the Draft Network. And he's a sub package edge in a 4-3 front with some high end athletic traits and movement. So, relentless motor, that's what you like to see. So, that's kind of what the Chicago Bears are hoping to get out of their defensive linemen. But I'm really liking this one. I'm really digging this mock draft that the computers did because when I'm looking at this, you lock down the offensive line with Bernard Raymond, with Tyler Smith. You are set. You are set at offensive line. David Bell is the only person that I'm a little questionable about, but I know that a lot of people really like him out there, just don't like his separation ability or lack thereof. Kobe Bryant, I like that selection at cornerback, predominantly zone heavy type of guy. Damone Clark, red shirt, and then we'll see what he ends up doing. And I know that it seems like the Bears will be competing next year. Next year seems to, not this year, the following year seems to be where we could really start to compete. So this might be an investment in the future. And Cade Hall, like I said, don't know too much about him at edge. I just don't love when we're selecting an edge player in these scenarios because I just don't think we need it with Muhammad, with Gibson, with Quinn. Unless we moved Quinn, then obviously I'd want that, but could be a good solid fourth type of edge rusher. So I want to just kind of go through and just kind of pick out my favorite. I think that this is going to be way too hard to select a actually tier these. So I'm probably just going to select a favorite. So the first one that we had was Tyler Smith. So just recapping, first selection that the computers made was Tyler Smith, interior offensive lineman out of Tulsa. George Pickens, wide receiver out of Georgia. Kingsley, the edge out of South Carolina, Max Mitchell, offensive tackle, Louisiana, Ioma, the interior defensive lineman out of Iowa State, and Jack Jones, the cornerback out of Arizona State. I like this one because you are at least kind of addressing the offensive line. You have Tyler Smith, who should be able to be a very flexible pick when you select him. I think that he's more of a tackle, but a lot of people are saying he's more of a guard, and there's other spots that people like him at tackle. I think that polls will really like that flexibility, and Max Mitchell is someone that can compete for the different tackle spots or be a good swing tackle for you. And I like the depth that Ioma and Jack Jones brings, even though that Ioma is more of a run stuffer. Don't really like Kingsley. I just am not a big fan of him. So I like George Pickens, though, obviously, because it locks down kind of that wide receiver spot. So to me, this is good. If we go to the next one, Tyler Linderbaum, interior offensive lineman out of Iowa, fell to us. Tiny arms, lack of power, fell to us there. One of the best center prospects we've seen in a decade. Love that it locks it down. Cameron Thomas, seeing him more as that three tech. Trey McBride, the tight end out of Colorado State. Very interesting pick by the computers to have two tight ends kind of be your starters. But very interesting, but still an interesting selection, to say the least. Kellen Deesh, good swing tackle, very highly athletic, good high ceiling. I feel Danny Gray could be a good depth wide receiver, and Algier, good running back. To me, I like this draft because of the the depth that we are getting. I think that this makes the team better, but I don't think it allows us to win now because we're not selecting a wide receiver high because they decided to go with Trey McBride rather than actual wide receivers. So I think overall, I might like this one a little bit better. If there's one that you see, feel free to comment that you really like. Actually, I'll keep it in the same order. So the number one, number two, and when we get down to number three, this is where we see Traylon Burks dropping to us at pick 39, 48, Cameron Thomas again. At number three tech, Jamari Salyer, Max Mitchell, Sincere McCormick, the running back, and Thomas Booker, interior D lineman. I look at this and I'm not absolutely in love with it because we're really kind of just what's nice is we're at least addressing the guard position, and I like Max Mitchell. Traylon Burks can be a good wide receiver for us. So I really like these, but I don't like what we do later on in the draft a little bit. But let's move on to our fourth one. Here's where we have the amazing Chris Olave dropping to us and the computer picking it up. So thank God. Cameron Thomas, yet again, Leo Chenal, the linebacker out of Wisconsin, who's more run stuffing, Jack Jones, cornerback out of Arizona State, Max Mitchell again, and Chris Paul. This one to me, even though that we have Olave, to me, this is actually my least favorite because of what we did later on. That's just my personal preference. I love Olave. Love it. Love it. My favorite pick that we've done, but I don't like the rest that the computers did. Honestly, I keep going back to this one and I kind of like it just because the last one we have Bernard Raymond, Tyler Smith, really locking down that offensive line, David Bell, jump ball receiver. Don't love the separation or lack thereof. So then we have Kobe Bryant that can kind of be a competitor at that cornerback position. Damone Clark, who's very phenomenal, but more of a next year type of guy. And Cade Hall, San Jose State. I don't know too much about him, but I don't think we really need an edge, but can at least be a backup. Let me know in the comments who you think is the best, what the best draft class is. But I'm going to move the Olave one. I don't love, so I'm going to move that as kind of my last one. This is very difficult. A part of me really likes this one, the one with Tyler Linderbaum, Cameron Thomas. I like Trey McBride, Kellen Diesch, Danny Gray, Tyler Algier. I just think that this builds the team very well. And that's why I think that this might be ultimately my favorite. I think this is truly my favorite that's out there. Let me know, because this is a very difficult decision to make, but I'm going to go with this one as my number one. So number one overall for me, Tyler Linderbaum, center out of Iowa, Cameron Thomas, who can be our 3 tech, Trey McBride as just a good, solid tight end player that we can have out there. Kellen Diesch gives us really good offensive lineman depth at that tackle position and could even compete for a starting job. Danny Gray gives us a little bit of depth of wide receiver. And Tyler Algier, the running back out of BYU. Only thing is I hope that we then end up getting some wide receiver, maybe Julio Jones, maybe someone else that we can at least pick up. I mean, Julio Jones is a little bit washed up, but that's my only fear, is that we just don't have a great wide receiver. That's the only thing I don't love about this one. But still, I like how we know that poll is all about building a team, building a roster. And I think that this truly gives us the best depth, the best roster construction out there possible. So thank you all so much. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe. This is our first live show in a very, very long time. If you like that, please comment below. I'll probably just ask a question out there. If you like the live show or don't like the live show, thumb up, thumb down type of thing. So I'll comment on that after this. But thank you all so much. Make sure to also follow us, Unbearable Sports, on Twitter and Instagram, and Unbearable Sports Podcast. We're out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad chick.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.